Avengers. Whoa, he makes that look a lot easier in the movies. Hey gamers, it's me, Shinobi Nando, and today I'm reviewing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is a sequel only in name to the other two games of the franchise. Whereas Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 clearly took place after the events of 1, Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order seems to be its own self-contained story. Which, funnily enough, brings us to the first topic of the review. The story of The Black Order is an amalgamation of both the films, which are increasingly more popular, and the comics. So much so that the game borrows a lot of the film's aesthetics in order to ease new players in. Even a lot of the locations are reused, such as Nowhere, Wakanda, Asgard. But we'll get into the art style a bit later in the review. Now the story is serviceable. It's okay. It's, as I said before, it's a hybridization of the movies and the comics. Thanos and the Black Order themselves do tend to lean more towards the comic side, where the other characters seem to be either a mix of their MCU and comic or cartoon counterparts, or just ripped straight from the movies themselves. The game starts off with the Guardians of the Galaxy on the hunt for rare treasures, and lo and behold, they find all 6 Infinity Stones conveniently on a Kree battleship. From there, they meet up with the rest of our heroes, gallivant across the galaxy, all in an effort to keep the Infinity Stones out of Thanos' hand, his big, purple, gold-gloved hand. If this sounds familiar, you're right, it absolutely does. However, there are some twists and turns, but most of these are due, unfortunately, to the game's very sporadic pace. Long gone are the in-between chapter hub sections, where you get to chat to story characters, learn more lore from your playable characters, explore iconic locations such as Wakanda or the Xavier Mansion, unlock side missions, alternative costumes, etc. Instead, they're replaced with shield points, where sometimes, plot dependent, there'll be a few of the characters that you either just met or just recruited. And you can have a little bit of a chin waggle with them, but you won't really glean any kernels of knowledge that pertain to the overall plot. Not that there is much of one anyway. The side plots themselves, and there's only roughly about 2, kind of are just out of place or just shoehorn in there to kind of explain things. However, I did enjoy the subplot with the Isowates, a new material created specifically for this game. Not only a gameplay mechanic, they're kind of like a MacGuffin or Deus Ex Machina. They're crystals derived from when an Infinity Stone basically uses its power and warps the area around it. These crystals, both in-game and in the story, boost the person's abilities. And much like the Kryptonian pills in the Injustice series, these are used to explain how certain characters are able to stand toe-to-toe with beings like Thanos and his Black Order. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Defenders and Iron Fist in particular, but I don't really see them doing much against a guy that can tank Mjolnir to the face. Back to the story, like I said, this goes at a breakneck speed. And as I said before, without the advent of hubs, in order for you to learn more, take time to explore and level up, you go from one location to another. 1 minute you're in the raft, then you're in Asgard, then you're on the moon, then you're in Hell, then you're in Wakanda, then you're in Nowhere, then you're in the Shadowlands. To be honest, by the end of the game, I couldn't even remember half the story. I had to redo some chapters just for this review. But enough about the story, let's get on to the main crux of the game, the gameplay. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 employs an easy-to-learn, harder-to-master type combat system. New to the game is the stagger mechanic. Enemies now have a purple gauge underneath their HP bar, and if you can inflict the right type of damage using the correct moves, or using the new synergy moves, you will stagger and then stun these enemies, opening them up for a ton more damage. In my opinion, this is a double-edged sword, both interesting from a gameplay standpoint, but heavily overused. A lot of boss fights devolve into these synergy battles. In fact, I'd almost equate them to posture battles in Sekiro, although less fun. Some enemies, especially the larger ones, simply cannot be hurt, until you stagger them, meaning that you're going to spam powers that do less damage and more stagger, leading to sometimes a very repetitive gameplay. Synergy attacks are cool and replace fusion attack, no longer needing to combine two ultimate abilities in order to create a fusion attack. Synergies are when you use two basic abilities that work harmoniously together. And just like the stagger meter, this is both a blessing and a curse. It opens up some really cool combos between characters and some classic moves that can be pulled off at any time, such as the classic Cap Iron Man repulsor beam shield, and some new funky ones such as Storm creating a tornado and Deadpool firing his machine guns in it, creating some kind of crazy ricochet effect. However, this also simplifies the abilities overall. Characters now only have 4 main abilities, and they all kind of follow a rhyme or reason. Characters generally have a high damage attack, an area attack, a stagger attack, and sometimes a unique power. Spider-Man can flip and bind characters with many of his attacks. Captain America and Black Panther can use Vibranium to reflect or absorb damage. And probably the most unique of all is Wanda. She can debuff and buff her allies as well as heal, but she sacrifices a lot of these synergy attacks. Don't get me wrong, some of them are really cool, but it did kind of get old fast. Casters were actually really cool. They tend to have the most unique abilities. You have newcomers like Crystal that can use all 4 elements and add them to certain melee fighters' basic light and heavy attacks. Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch can heal. And Magneto is so OP, guys. Like, once you unlock him, he has this magnetic ability, obviously, and he could just clear a battlefield very quickly. But just like the melee characters, the casters still have the same issue. A lot of powers overlapping. As I said before, everyone has a kind of dashing stagger attack, a barrage attack. A lot of characters have lost their unique selling point from the previous 2 games, including again my favorite Iron Fist losing his ability to heal via chi. Speaking of simplifying things, no longer do characters have individual stats that you can level up. You level up your alliance as a whole, which makes it much easier to swap characters on the fly. Out of all the changes, this is probably one of my personal favorite. You can level up the individual stats. Not only do they infect your entire roster of 30 plus characters, but there are unique bonuses that you can unlock again for everyone, such as health regeneration, extra XP, damage resistance, stagger bonus, and many more. Speaking of new mechanics, this brings us back to ISO weights, guys. ISO weights are also a gameplay mechanic. They're kind of like your equipment. They have their own bonus stats, such as again, more health damage, health regeneration, elemental attacks, etc. that you can put on the character as you unlock ISO weight slots. And once you unlock a certain type of ISO weight, the game really changes for you. You can pretty much ignore the ISO 8 system, but if you want to play on higher difficulties like I did, or want to do some of the harder Infinity challenges, you're gonna need to learn about ISO 8. And just to clear this up, because I know there's a bit of confusion, there are absolutely no microtransactions, even though this game is rife with systems that could be abused for it, including the XP cubes. A nice touch. Defeat enemies or bosses or replay Infinity Trials in order to earn cosmic cubes, which will level up your characters that you're not using, so if you do want to swap out, you can. But you never seem to have quite enough, meaning that I was stuck basically using my team of defenders the entire game, and that will be a problem for some of you that don't have the time to grind out every single character. You will need to choose a core team of about 4 or 6 characters and just maybe swap 1 or 2 in or out. To sum up the gameplay, the combat is fun if not oversimplified, with some mastery over the stagger mechanic needed in order to progress on the harder difficulty, but the Alliance and ISO 8 system are a welcome change. Speaking of the Infinity Trials before, these are actually quite fun to do, especially in co-op, and kind of replace the side missions that were in the previous games. You can unlock more ability points, more cosmic cubes, more ISO 8s, and occasionally the odd alternative skin or unlock a new character such as Magneto and Loki. That brings us to our next point before I go on a mad rant, and that's the art style and graphics. I think personally this is going to be the most divisive part of the review, as this already seems to split the fan base. Team Ninja have gone for more of an anime or comic cel shaded style graphics for this game, which looks absolutely fantastic for the cutscenes and the combat itself. However, as a side effect of being on the Switch, in order to make it run, especially on handheld mode, the level designs themselves and the backgrounds are often very, very simplified, with only a few set pieces here and there, such as a giant man fighting Ultimo in the background. However, the characters themselves and the enemies, they are fantastically designed, if not oddly conflicting. Now, this is just a minor nitpick, and it didn't really bug me. I just found it kind of jarring at times, but just like the story being a hybridization of the MCU and the comics, certain characters are weirdly, like, screen accurate to their MCU counterparts. Some of them are ripped straight from the pages of the comics, and you can kind of have this weird balance between the two. Even teens are not safe from this, as the Guardians of the Galaxy have Drax and Gamora more akin to their comic counterpart, but then Rocket, Groot, and Star-Lord look exactly like they do from the film, minus obviously Chris Pratt's ginger hair. Captain America, Black Panther, Spider-Man in particular, all really look like they're from the films. Danny, Luke Cage, Scarlet Witch, and Elektra look straight from the comics. Then you have an odd mix of the two, such as Captain Marvel, Wasp, Falcon, and Doctor Strange, very much looking like a hybridization of the two, while the X-Men themselves are ripped straight from the 90s cartoon show. The biggest letdown for me, and this is a major point, is the costumes or the alternate skins, if you could call them that. All of them are grinded out through the Infinity Trial, some of them requiring you to get 3 stars on every single one of the trials in order to get their costume. And what do you get for your struggle? It's not great. Instead of alternate costume, you simply get palette swaps designed to look sort of like costumes from either the films or their comic book history, which is an issue considering that alternate costumes are a staple of superhero games. Captain America has his colors slightly shifted to look more like the shield suit from Winter Soldier. Captain Marvel's suit looks like it does in the MCU when she's part of the pre-Star Force. Spider-Man swaps his blue and red for black and silver in order to mimic the armored spider suit. And Hawkeye is literally a lighter shade of purple. I'm not even joking. He's a lighter shade of purple. Complaints aside, I had a ton of fun with this game. Yes, there are some problems. Yes, this game does suffer from being on the Switch in terms of its art style, alternate skins. However, this is a good foundation for future games, and Team Ninja did do an outstanding job. I couldn't put this game down in co-op. I didn't even get into co-op. Co-op is so much fun, guys. And the final verdict for Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order, is a solid 3.5 stars out of 5. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the awkward 5-star system. You know how hard it is to like fit 10 stars or whatever in front of me? I don't have an editor anymore, guys. Let me know your thoughts of Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Did you pick it up? Are you gonna pick it up after this review? Don't forget to give this video a wow, okay, it's coming back. Man, that thing is dangerous. Hey, I think we're good, but subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.